Dallas Wings have the highest chances of becoming a winning franchise next season.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm Clea Butler. Joined alongside me is Sophia Jones. We're going to get into the CBA proposal and what the players' response was to the newest numbers. Again, that is coming up with the deadline on the 30th, and we're itching close to it. The new number one in the WNBA mock draft has come up, and honestly, it might not be a surprise of who it is. But before that, the draft lottery was yesterday. Before we jump into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Now, I just know that the new head coach, Jose Fernandez, has to be, well, he was jumping for joy because the Dallas Wings posted a video of him jumping for joy. But for the second year in a row, the Dallas Wings will have the number one pick in the WNBA draft. They were projected to have the number one pick again, and they did. They have lucked out. I mean, last year, you get Paige Beckers to now turn around, have a brand new coach, win the draft lottery again. I truly didn't think they would pull it off. I felt there would be an upset somewhere. Like you said earlier, maybe the Storm would get it. Somebody new, fingers crossed. I'm rooting for the Sky, obviously. But Dallas does it once again. First overall pick. They are the fourth franchise to have the first overall pick in consecutive seasons. Sophia, what was your response to this?
My initial reaction was almost underwhelmed because the 1 through 5 was exactly like how their percentages were. Dallas first, Minnesota second, Seattle third, Mystics fourth, Sky fifth. So there was really no movement. No one jumped anyone there. It was a really big deal last season when the Dallas Wings took that leap over the Los Angeles Sparks for that number one pick. So I was like, okay, no surprises here, but I'm sure that everyone in Dallas is thrilled. And just having back-to-back number one picks is going to be so valuable for the franchise. They're really trying to build something new. They're renovating or they're building a new practice facility. So they've been trying to do a little bit of a rebrand for that organization, a new coach. So a lot of freshness going into Dallas in this situation. And looking at that organization is right now surrounded by Paige, I can imagine that she's going to have a say in who she wants them to select number one. But just having that number one pick alleviates so much pressure, and it really helps to boost optimism for a franchise that really struggled last season to win games.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, I know Paige is somewhere happy that they got the number one pick again, especially because who the possibility of that number one pick is going to be. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Dallas forward Maddie Siegrist was the team's lottery representative. And she said, we want someone who wants to win. We've got an exciting young group, and we really bond together. I'm excited to bring someone else in. She makes a really strong point, obviously, in terms of them being a young core. That played a factor for sure into them not necessarily fully clicking this season. Hopefully with the addition of Jose Fernandez, that they'll be able to work out some of those kinks. But adding a fresh face to a franchise that obviously had a losing season, but also has so much hope for what they can be, especially with a Paige Beckers on the team. First of all, that's going to have anybody want to come to your team. I mean, obviously, if you're selected number one, that's where you're going no matter what. But it brings a level of excitement. But also, I feel like you want to perform at that point. I know if I was selected number one overall to Dallas that had a losing season, but I also have to go up against the team teammate Paige Beckers, but also she's low-key a coach half the time too. I mean, I think we saw her coaching through her team up throughout the season, but even when she went back to UConn practices, she was on the practice players. Like she was like, no, they weren't locked in, they weren't focused, and I had to get on them for that. You want to perform for Paige Beckers, who's the face of the franchise. But I think having another number one pick, they have really good chances with a brand new head coach, with Paige, with a young core of completely flipping the script from last season.
Definitely. And this is coming off of, or the Dallas Wings, they're in a pretty good situation when you look at some of the past teams that had consecutive number one picks. Most recently, the Indiana Fever with Aaliyah Boston and Kaylin Clark. Before that, you had the Aces, who actually had three consecutive number one picks. That was Kelsey Plum, Asia Wilson, Jackie Young. Before that, the Storm selected Jewel Lloyd and Brianna Stewart. And then more so throwback, the Storm also selected Sue Bird and Lauren Jackson. So the Wings are in pretty good company with that group, the Indiana Fever being the most recent. So you haven't really seen the full turnaround, you can say. But those other squads I mentioned are all title winners. So that could very well be in the Wings' path for their future if you want to go based off of patterns.
Yeah, over the past 5 years, only the Indiana Fever have had more lottery picks than the Wings. And then obviously Beckers and Segrist, number three, who was third in 2023, were the only lottery picks to play for Dallas last season. But when we're looking at the rest of the list, the Lynx having the number two pick is very scary considering the caliber of players you already have. Obviously, not this last year, but the year prior, making it all the way down to the finals, playing in 5 games, having a little bit more of a rough run in their playoff series this year. But to think that they are now going to have a brand new addition of somebody else that can be a very scary threat in the WNBA. We've seen the transition of college players coming into the league and having a lot of success already. No matter what team they're on, no matter what their seasons really look like, individual accolades, they've been performing very well. To have that on a Lynx squad that is already so stacked is just what do you how can you even keep elevating is the question that I have.
Exactly. That's the epitome of just greediness. How greedy by the Minnesota Lynx. It was during the season as well because they acquired that second pick from, or the chances to get that second pick from the Chicago Sky in the trade with Ariel Atkins. So the Lynx really kind of cashed out on this, especially when you're looking at that top. Honestly, five prospects are in the draft right now. We've seen a good bit of movement already. We'll get into that more, but they are gonna have their pick essentially, and when you think about the vets that this player will be surrounded by, the ability to be coached by a WNBA championship winning Cheryl Reeve in a great basketball city like Minneapolis, there are a lot of positives there.
Absolutely. Then you have the Storm, which will have the third pick, which we mentioned, which I think is a really good position for them too. Thinking of another team that has a brand new head coach and what they can continue growing on. Obviously, when you have Aneka on the team, you have another team that has a lot of veterans, Skylar Diggins, to name a few. There's so many on the team, but to name a few, Gabby Williams, who was their representative, there's a lot of space for development on both these teams when we're thinking of the Storm, the Lynx, even the Wings. And then you have the Washington Mystics, who has clearly seen a lot of success when you're thinking of having what is truly a young core of players.
Yeah, young core is exhibited to the fullest extent in the Washington Mystics. Even when you're expanding that out a little bit and looking at a player like Shakira Austin, who has spent a couple years in the league, but still on the upstart of her career. And then last year's draft picks, Kiki Iriafin, Sonia Citron, Georgia Amor, who we didn't see last season, but we will hopefully will in this upcoming season after suffering that torn ACL during training camp. but the Washington Mystics are a future-oriented team, and I think there's absolutely no doubt that they're gonna be one of the best teams in the W very soon to come.
And then last but not least, obviously saving the best for last. I'm being biased. This is only within the top 5. But the last I'm going to mention in terms of the top 5 that are selected, Chicago Sky will have the number 5 pick, who at this current moment, we're going to get into it a little bit more, has the possibility of being Flau'jae Johnson, which could be a little bit of an LSU reunion. But after this, we are going to get into the WNBA's latest mock draft and some surprising and not so surprising names on that list. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll benefits and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save me hours every week. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnba and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnba. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnba. So, in our previous episode, we mentioned that Awa Fam could possibly be the number 1 overall pick. However, that was on Friday. It's a brand new day. uh, After Azzi's very strong performance against Michigan, she has actually now moved up to be the projected number 1 overall pick. And when we were just talking about who that could possibly be, sometimes words are hard, possibly be, is none other than the Dallas Wings. A possible reunion with Paige Beckers, which has been, what do the kids call them? Tabloids? Been in the tabloids? I don't think kids call them that, but whatever. Been all over the tabloids. Obviously, everybody is a Paisy stan. But as of right now, draft predictions right now, it could be number 1 Dallas Wings with Azzi Fudd. Number 2 at the Minnesota Lynx, Awa Fam. She's moved down a spot. Number 3 for the Seattle Storm, Olivia Miles. Number 4 for the Washington Mystics is Lauren Betts. And then number 5 for the Chicago Sky, as I mentioned, is Flau'jae Johnson. The list goes on, but for the essence of what we were just talking about with the lottery and those top 5 picks, these are some heavy hitters that are going up pretty early. I think one of the most interesting aspects is that number 1 pick, where we've seen 3 different people at so far right now. First, it was Lauren Betts. Then it was Awa Fam. Now it's Azzi Fudd. It keeps rotating based on performance right now. Azzi obviously coming off a 30-plus point performance against Michigan, who's been a very strong competitor. What was your initial reaction to seeing the switch and the idea of Azzi and Paige possibly having a reunion?
It is not surprising. I mean, she's coming off, like you mentioned, that game against Michigan where she had 31 points. Just Sunday against Utah, she finished with 24 points, 8 rebounds. For the season, though, she is shooting 43% from three-pointer. That's a pretty sizable jump from last year, almost 10 whole percentage, and that was what one of the biggest questions surrounding Azzi early in the season or before the season was how could she better develop that consistency, and we're already seeing that. We can see that she's leading UConn and this squad to still be that number 1 pick. It doesn't feel like the Huskies had faltered in their winning ways, and you could definitely consider her and some of Sarah Strong to be at the helm of that. And just again, that possibility of the reunion with Azzi and Paige, they've won together before. They could very well do it again. However, I would be very curious to then see how the Wings decide to navigate this upcoming free agency period because they do have a lot of guards on their roster. They are a guard dominant team that plays fast and they do get up a lot of shots and threes. So AZ does fit into that system, but because you already have a pretty stacked depth chart in that guard position, there might be a little bit of movement. Like I said, already considering that Paige and Enrique are the most ball dominant players on that team. Even when you're looking at Ali Yuru and Luisa Gaisel-Suda, they're centers, but they like to shoot 3-pointers as well.
Boy, do I know it.
So, oh yeah, true.
They were shooting the most threes of their life against the Sky. I was like, when did they do this?
Exactly. So it will be very, again, the Dallas Wings are going to have to ask or maybe do a little bit of maneuvering to, again, figure out how they want to navigate this if it is AZ that they want on the roster. And also want to mention with the new coach of Jose Fernandez, who has a great relationship with Gino REM, that's already another UConn connection.
Yeah, that was the initial thing that I thought of too, because what a nice transition it would be, you know, obviously being so close with Gino to get into a head coaching position at Dallas and then also have 2 UConn players right away where you're just like, okay, well, Gino's going to tell me everything I need to know about how to coach them and we can go from there. But truthfully, out of all of the kind of mix and matches that we've seen so far, I liked Awa Fam at that number 1 spot for Dallas in particular, because as you speak about, Dallas does have a lot of guard play. Paige and Enrique, we don't necessarily know if Enrique will stay or not. That can maybe play a factor into if they do decide to draft AZ. But when you're thinking of that size component that you want, but also just how well Awa Fam moves, and you know, when you're playing when you're trying to play fast, she is somebody that can absolutely be a rim runner. She can truthfully do it all. The fact that she is the size that she is and just moves so well. I mean, we're seeing that much more often than not at this point. But between a Lauren Betts, I feel like that's what Dallas could really be honing in on, is having those incredibly athletic centers who, as we've already seen, can pull out and shoot the 3. Lauren Betts still kind of, I feel like, working on that aspect of her game. But Awa Fam has shown that she's very well-rounded and only 19 years old. If you want another young player to come in and just really be able to develop and stay within the franchise around everybody else that's already young, Maddie Secret said it herself, we just want a winner. Awa Fam could definitely come in and try to win you guys some games. So very interested to see how this rotation will keep mixing and matching as the season goes about.
Definitely, because I would also be a little nervous for the entire WNBA if Awa Fam does end up on the Minnesota Lynx. When you're looking at the kind of mentors that she would have in that scenario, I already feel like she has a little bit of Nafisa Collier in her game, more so with her agility and footwork finishing around the rim and some of those turnaround jumpers. So that would be, I mean, only 19 years old as well, a tremendous upside. I was surprised, or not entirely surprised, to see that Olivia Miles is now sitting in that number 3 spot, because in the past drafts, if you're just going maybe by strength of player, they've had Lauren Betts number 1, number 2 before, and now she's at number 4. But it makes sense for the Storm to go for a guard like Olivia Miles when you already have a lot of depth inside, and you really want to build around Dom Malonga in that center position, as opposed to the Mystics. They could get Lauren Betts and really be that true center. I think that would be the best system for her to fit into. And with Kiki Iriafin and Shakira Austin, those are some of the other forwards in that position right now, but they're more mobile than Lauren, so they could easily interchange into that 4, stretch out the floor a little bit, maybe operate more in that mid-range and allow her to go to work right around the rim.
Yeah, and then at that last spot right now for Chicago, I love the idea of them drafting a guard. We need a lot more guard play for sure. Obviously, when you have that interior depth between Angel, who's also kind of moved positions a little bit, playing a little bit more of a four, has gotten much more comfortable attacking the rim, playing outside of the paint. She's talked about how much she wants to work on her perimeter shot. And I personally follow her on Instagram. All I see is her shooting threes, and the form is looking crisp. I cannot lie. So if she can pull out even further than what she already has, Camilla's a little shy when it comes to shooting threes, but she always hits them low key. Every time she pulls out, there's no other choice but for her to shoot the three. Camilla Cardoso can make them, but you also have an Elizabeth Williams. There's just a lot of depth when it comes to the inside for the Chicago Sky. A lot of the guard play as well is in free agency. So we don't know how many guards are truly going to return. You still have a Haley Van Lith, who's young and developing, who could look completely different this season, especially if she gets to contribute in Unrivaled too. But if you have that reconnection of a Haley, a Flage, and an Angel and LSU, and then I can see Kim Mulkey at the games and have the outfits like just in front of me. I mean, life couldn't get much better than that.
No, the Chicago Sky would, I think, be an ideal fit for Flage. Also, just with the Sky, I'm sure you could talk about this more, but one area that their offense was ahead of their defense this past season, and when you're looking at a player like Flage, she fits into that offense and in her ability to score, but defensively, she can also really provide some perimeter length.
Yeah, I agree with you. Flage's a great height. She's like 5'11", almost 6 feet tall, essentially. She plays incredibly fast. And that I think the perimeter, as I said, Dallas, even their centers were shooting some of the most threes I've ever seen them take in our lives. The perimeter defense, the transition defense, it was definitely something that it just wasn't there all season long. There was certain spurts where they showed that they can get back, but it wasn't consistent. So being able to have Flage and kind of her being able to have that lockdown perimeter defense as the first line of defense, and even just having some of our bigs be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to interior play, because I've seen Elizabeth Williams block a ball. I think I have one of them like reposted in my Instagram little things. Like, she does not play when it comes to protecting the rim. I think what hurt most this season was the perimeter defense. But if they could have a Flage Johnson come in and contribute and just start there and build around that, already having the pieces when it comes to some of the bigs on the floor, they could be in a much better position this season than they were last. But coming up after this, the WNBA players still do not like the new CBA, and we are getting awfully close to the new deadline date. We will see what they had to say.
The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
So last time we spoke about the $1.1 million offer that they were making available to more than one player per team, which was supposed to be growing each year. That is what the league had proposed. However, the WNBPA does not view the league's latest CBA proposal as something that moves negotiations forward. I think when you see like certain social media clips, stuff like that, it can be very muddled. People feeling like, well, that seems like a lot of money. Why wouldn't the players want to accept over $1 million? Well, the problem is the gray area that Sophia and I were talking about not too long ago is that still didn't include revenue sharing and that base salary would allow for a max salary of $1.1 million. But the biggest component that they have been looking for is that revenue sharing. And based on the newest proposal, that wasn't necessarily included. It was a little bit vague in terms of just saying it will grow as like per season or something, but there's no set number, set percentage of that. So they want to include a system where the salary cap and player salaries sufficiently grow with the business, as the players do not want a fixed salary system, which is kind of what they were leaning towards in that. And instead want one based more directly on revenue, obviously similar to the NBA, which they have spoke about a couple of times. I'll let Sophia respond to this first before I have my other point.
Yeah, when we received reports of this new CBA proposal from the league, like you said, our initial impressions were you can get a little bit distracted by seeing that 1.1 million figure. However, there's still a lot that was left ambiguous in the actual terms. And so it sounds like for this, the 1 million isn't really straight up. It's because the revenue sharing and the base salary, so a combination of those two would allow for a max salary of $1.1 million. So they're not just getting that actual number on a contract sliding across the table or however they do it these days. But that's where some of the issue is. And then again, the players have been so adamant that they want to be paid proportional to how the league grows. Right now, that growth is exponential, not fixed or linear. And so they want a salary system or a revenue sharing system that is reflected of that exponential growth, not that fixed or linear system that the WNBA has used in the past. This current CBA agreement is with a 3% yearly increase. I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but in these last couple years, I don't think it grew. The league's impact has grown by 3% every year. So they just want something that's more reflective of that.
Yes, I think another key point that hasn't necessarily been explicitly mentioned in the CBA negotiations, or the players particularly have said, but aside from the money aspect of things, I don't know if the players will love the idea of Kathy Engelbert returning, especially after everything that they have been through relationship wise. It seems as though the relationship is not strong between the players and Kathy Engelbert. And it seems like it would be a situation very difficult to come back from. Not that this has been explicitly said, but I wouldn't be surprised if players also would not necessarily be fully content with these negotiations until she agreed to step down as commissioner. I feel like, in the growth of what the league has done so far, I feel like they may want to include a fresh face when it comes to who's commissioner, somebody that has maybe been in their shoes before. I don't exactly know what that would look like, or obviously if that is even something that would happen. But it seems, since obviously along the sides, besides the fact that they haven't come to an agreement in terms of the financial aspect of things, I'm curious if leadership and who they want to kind of be the face of the league from the business side of things, if they want that to change as well. But that just hasn't been outright mentioned.
I mean, when Nafisa Collier, right before the WNBA finals, is saying that the WNBA has the worst leadership in the world and put Kathy Engelberg specifically on blast for comments that she made in conversations that the two of them had, that is a pretty difficult situation to retract on. Kathy Engelberg also responded saying that she isn't a quitter. So it doesn't sound like she has, as of 2 months ago, right before the WNBA finals, it didn't sound like she had any intentions to step down. But I think the WNBA players are just really trying to stand their ground because they know that this CBA right now is going to be so impactful for the future growth of the league. And I think when you look at a lot of these other operations that are going on, like an Unrivaled, Athletes Unlimited, Project B now coming into the picture, there are a lot of components that are putting pressure on the WNBA. And if the W wants to continue to be seen as the premier women's basketball association, then they need that CBA and the treatment of the players to be reflected in that.
Well, just about 6 more days till we determine the newest fate of the WNBA. Maybe not that dramatic, but still 6 more days until that new deadline hits. We'll see if the players decide for an extension, if the WNBA decides for an extension. Hopefully we find that out in the next couple of days. But thank you so much for watching Locked On Women's Basketball. We will see you guys again tomorrow.